Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to the second webinar in our three-part Embracing Care series. We're happy that you have all joined us this evening. This series is brought to you by Can Do MS and EMD Serono. Tonight's webinar's focus is when hands-on caregiving is added to support the support partner's role, practical information and strategies. My name is Holly Theraldson, Programs Manager for Can Do MS, and I will be your moderator this evening. Embracing Cares is an initiative led by EMD Serono in collaboration with leading caregiver organizations around the world to increase awareness and action about the often overlooked needs of caregivers. This series includes 3 webinars, 2 podcasts, and 3 online support groups specifically for partners. You can find information about upcoming webinars and podcasts on our website at cando-ms.org/EC. Can Do MS delivers health and wellness education programs to help families with MS thrive. Please visit the Can Do MS website, cando-ms.org, to learn more about Can Do MS's online and nationwide in-person programs. We will save about 20 minutes at the end of this webinar for questions and answers. If you have a question during the presentation, you can type it in the question chat box found in your control panel. This presentation is being recorded and will be archived on Can Do MS websites. You can download a copy of tonight's presentation from your control panel, and you will also be able to access resources from this webinar in the follow-up email that will be sent after the Embracing Cares webinar. Our speakers this evening are Roz Kolb and Mandy Rohr. Roz Kolb is a clinical psychologist who has specialized in MS care, support, and education for over 30 years. Roz was with the National MS Society from 2000 to 2016, and she is currently working with the Society as a consultant, and she is also a senior programs consultant on the Can Do MS team. Welcome, Roz.
Nice to be here. Thanks, Holly.
Mandy works in an outpatient physical therapy setting where she specializes in rehabilitation of individuals with neurological conditions with a special emphasis on individuals with MS, as well as balance and vestibular disorders. She is also a senior programs consultant with Can Do MS. Welcome, Mandy. And now I'd like to turn the program over to Roz and Mandy.
Great. Welcome, everyone. We're glad to have you this evening. Our objectives for this webinar are as follows. Participants and support partners will learn to recognize and navigate the role changes that occur as needs and disability level change, become familiar with the tools, strategies, and resources to assist with hands-on care, recognize the importance of support partner health, safety, and well-being in the face of caregiving challenges. And lastly, but certainly not least, learn the strategies for communicating comfortably about needs, feelings, and challenges.
Welcome, everybody. We're very, very happy that you're all with us, and Mandy and I always enjoy working together to bring you information. Things about the support partner role are very consistent over the course of the disease. It always involves mutual support between the person with MS and the support partner. We hope that it always incorporates shared decision-making, where you work together to make important decisions about your everyday life, the MS treatments, your plans for the future. Whatever decision-making and planning you need to do, we hope that that's consistent over the disease course. But what increases, as you'll see at the bottom, is how assistance is provided. So in the early days of MS, it tends to be that you offer assistance when asked, because there's a lot of time when the person with MS may not need any assistance at all, may feel very safe and comfortable and independent. But as the disease progresses, the person with MS may need assistance with some physical tasks, with some cognitive tasks, depending on how the disease is affecting that person. So there may be more assistance needed. And then if it comes to a time when there are significant disabilities, this is when support partners may find themselves providing hands-on assistance with all of the activities of daily living. And so tonight we're going to be talking about what some of the challenges are related to that and how you can deal with those challenges.
So how do you know if you're a hands-on support partner? So we've kind of tried to outline some of the responsibilities that you may have if you are a hands-on support partner. So that could include activities of daily living, such as toileting, bathing, dressing, eating, transferring maybe from the bed to a wheelchair, maybe providing some assistance with walking or even propelling a wheelchair as needed. It could also include instrumental activities of daily living. And this, again, these are a few examples: driving, bookkeeping, shopping, cleaning, cooking. Certainly this list isn't exhaustive of the possibilities that could exist, but hopefully it gives you a bit of a snapshot as to what a hands-on caregiver might do. I think it's also important to note that hands-on caregiving doesn't have to be an all or none. It may be intermittent, and it may be with some tasks some days and not those tasks on others.
So I've had the opportunity in my 17 or so years at Can Do MS to spend a lot of time with support partners. In our programs, I almost always am the person who is facilitating the groups where the support partners get together and talk and share. They talk about their challenges and they talk about their successes and their strengths. And so it's always an honor for me to hear all of this. But one of the themes that I hear very consistently from individuals in a support partner role that involves a lot of care and hands-on assistance is that they feel that they wear a lot of hats. In addition to their full-time jobs, they may also be helping with some of the person's personal or nursing needs. They may be doing all the cooking or the housekeeping. They are expected to be able to mind read and know when things are needed and when things are not. They just feel like they're wearing a lot of hats, and sometimes that feeling becomes very, very overwhelming. And they will say to each other and to me in the groups that sometimes they wish they could just take all those hats off. This is the best picture we could come up with of taking off all those hats and just feeling the freedom of not having all those responsibilities piled on at once. And as we talk about this tonight, we're going to look at different ways to meet the challenges that make people feel as though they just want to take a break and take all of those hats off and shed some of those responsibilities. And that will also lead us in to the next webinar in this series, where we talk about what happens when people have difficulty shedding the hats and finding time for themselves.
So moving forward, Roz and I want to explore a variety of quotes that we've heard over the years with working with families who have multiple sclerosis to illustrate some of these challenges that happen when people experience challenges regarding hands-on caregiving. So the first quote is, "I feel like our world is shrinking." Feel like our world is shrinking. So what can this couple do? What can someone who's feeling like their world is shrinking do? What do they do? And this quote was actually inspired by a couple that I worked with a while ago. The wife had MS, and the husband desperately wanted to be able to go out and do what they used to do. They like to go to dinners. They like to go to concerts. And so the wife was quite reluctant to use anything other than her wheeled walker for her mobility. She was quite reluctant. And finally in PT one day, her husband's like, why don't we just try a scooter? Like, why don't we just try a scooter? He urged her to try this, and I was on board. We had spoken about it before. So they agreed, they rented one, they went out on the town, they enjoyed themselves, they probably stayed out a little too late and enjoyed themselves a little too much, but nonetheless, they realized that their world didn't have to feel so small because they used this mobility aid. So that first bullet about mobility aids and adaptive equipment being for the whole family, it is for the whole family. And sometimes you kind of get stuck in the grind, and you don't realize that there are other options that might be out there that could really be helpful. So talk with your rehab team and let them know those challenges and be open to those options. The second point is that planning is essential. You know, we'll use this dinner party or this going out to dinner example again. Sometimes simply planning ahead and anticipating the mobility challenges and obstacles in the environment can really help to feel like expanding that world is less risky, may make it feel less risky. So for example, somebody who maybe wants to go out to dinner, they could consider using Google Earth and check out outside of the restaurant they want to go visit. They can call the restaurant and say, hey, what are your restrooms like? Can you send me a couple pictures to my cell phone? Or what is your entrance like? Am I going to be able to get around this place comfortably? So planning, anticipating. The next bullet about modifications, adaptations, and strategies. So it is important to be open and flexible and to considering other modifications to the environment, particularly the vehicle and within the home. Sometimes some adaptations to a vehicle can make accessing the environment the outside environment much easier, and some home modifications, such as like a ramp perhaps, can make a world of difference also. But in order to identify which modifications are most helpful, it's something that you really need to talk with your rehabilitation team, most specifically your occupational therapist and a physical therapist, and have them come in your home and do a home evaluation to see what can be done to help you. The next point is about mobility aids for different environments. I think it is important to be flexible, again, and be open to different options, like the example I used about the gal with the scooter. So recognize that it doesn't have to be a one-size-fits-all choice when it comes to mobility equipment, and that you can have options and you may need options in order to optimize your quality of life. And next is the proper assistance techniques. So rather than pulling on someone's arm or the support partner feeling like they have to bend over and do lots of lifting, sometimes incorporating some of this adaptive equipment can change how the support partner facilitates or assists with a particular movement. So again, your rehab team can be really helpful in kind of problem solving and doing a little detective work of what equipment is helpful and then how best to use that. And last but certainly not least is the importance of safety. Safety, the right equipment, the right adaptive equipment and adaptations to the environment will not only be safer for the person living with MS and the support partner, but it will also allow you to do what you want to do and optimize your quality of life. If it doesn't, then it's probably not the best piece of equipment for you at this time.
Can I just add one thing to what you said? We're talking about how planning is essential, reminded me of an instance that I learned a lot from. A family was having a reunion in a city that wasn't home to them. They were all getting together. And the father in the family had MS and was unable to walk independently. So was going to be arriving at this out-of-town event in a wheelchair, needing lots of assistance. But the family did due diligence, and they called the restaurant where the celebratory dinner was going to be. And they said, do you have a handicapped accessible bathroom? And the answer was yes. So they checked off that bit of the planning, feeling very good that they had found a place that would suit the father's need. And they get to this restaurant, it's pouring rain outside, and at some point, the father needs to go to the restroom. So the person who's assisting him, I think it was his son who was assisting him, signaled down the waiter and asked where the accessible bathroom was. And it turned out that the accessible bathroom was out the front door of the restaurant, along the sidewalk, into the next door restaurant, which had an accessible bathroom in the basement. So this restaurant had simply made some financial arrangement so that their patrons could use the accessible bathroom next door. So this is all just to say that when you plan ahead, you really need to be very specific, whether it's with hotels or cruise ships or restaurants or wherever you're going. Be very specific about what your needs are and make sure that you're getting an adequate response so that you don't have surprises. One of the best ways to increase your world space and get out and do things is if you can do it with confidence and know that wherever you're going, you're going to find what you need to be comfortable and safe. So
I like that. Oh, I don't like that story, but I like the lesson that's illustrated in that story, Roz.
oh yeah.
And it does, sometimes it is uncomfortable to, like this image, it's uncomfortable, and it takes a lot of courage to try new things, to try new pieces of equipment, and to be willing to take that chance. So yes, the more you can control, the more we can plan, the better and more confident you can feel. So these are just some images to illustrate different types of mobility maximizers that can help improve quality of life. This first illustration, this gentleman in the standing frame, just reminds all of you that sometimes doing some exercise and participating in exercise can do things like increase endurance, increase strength, increase mood, increase confidence, so that going out in the world and leaving the home and feeling comfortable with that, have the endurance and the stamina to enjoy that. This illustration of this gentleman doing some adaptive golf is just that, a gentleman doing adaptive golf in an adaptive golf cart. Two resources you can use, and I don't want to mess this up, Disabled Sports USA, as well as the U.S. Adaptive Golf Alliance, are two resources that you could use if golfing is something that would help your world feel larger. This is an example of a ramp in a wheelchair-accessible van. There are many, many, many options of adaptations for vehicles, so certainly talk to your rehabilitation team about what option is most appropriate for you. And I would even encourage you to look for those physical therapists and occupational therapists who have additional training in something called assistive technology. So ATP would be the credentials after their name. That ATP just says that they have additional training in assistive technology and things that could provide you more assistance. And this last image over here on the far right is just the reminder of the simple things, like use of the gait belt. I think using a gait belt is probably one of the most underutilized tools in rehabilitation and physical therapy. So I would encourage you to use that. And also a sliding board. Maybe simply making transfers more accessible can make your world, again, feel less small, or not feel so small, rather. So Roz, all of these ideas are great if we can't put them into action. So tell me a little bit about overcoming some of the emotional hurdles that are involved with starting adaptation.
Sure, thanks, Mandy. Yeah, I think that in today's world, we have so many tools available, so many new types of accessibility aids, and lots of expertise out there to help people use them. But sometimes the psychological hurdles are even greater than the physical ones to expanding one's world. I think that for anybody, needing to use an adaptive device or a mobility tool at first feels scary. It feels sad, like a loss. These are things I used to be able to do without any tools at all. I used to be able to get up and move around and go where I wanted to go. And it's very hard to deal with the loss of that freedom and independence. So a huge emotional hurdle just in grieving over the changes that have occurred and the need to use tools that one didn't have to use before. I think there are also communication challenges involved in all of this. And one of the things we talk about a lot at Can Do is how partners can talk to each other about mobility aids and adaptations being part of the shared family toolbox. Somebody recently said at a meeting, you know, MS isn't a me disease, it's a we disease. And so as you look to keep your world full and active, it's really important to be able to have some of these tough conversations. And sometimes partners need to convince each other of the use of a mobility aid. A support partner, as Mandy mentioned, might want to encourage their loved one with MS to use a tool that the person with MS doesn't feel quite ready to use. And the support partner is saying, well, I understand that you're not quite ready, but I'm ready. And if we could get a scooter for us, then we could do all kinds of things together that we used to enjoy all the time. So it is okay for a support partner to make the request. And conversely, sometimes support partners are reluctant for their loved one to use a scooter, for example, or a manual wheelchair because they're afraid that they'll get stuck using it, that they won't want to get up and walk anymore. They won't want to exercise, and it will not be good for their loved one to be so reliant on a tool. But I think, and I'm pretty sure Mandy will confirm this, we're pretty convinced that people's bottoms don't get glued to motorized scooters, and they don't get glued to manual wheelchairs. We see them as tools to help you get from point A to point B so that then you can conserve energy and have energy left to do the things that are really important to you. So communicating about that and making a shared decision about how the tool can help is a huge hurdle that a couple can work to overcome. Safety concerns, I think, are also important. Support partners are often worried that their loved one with MS is going to trip or fall or have an accident in the house, and the support partner is saying, you know, I wouldn't have to worry about you so much if I knew that you were using the assistive device that would help to keep you safe so that you can go out and do the things you want to do. So it could be a motorized scooter, it could be adaptations to your automobile, it could be anything that helps you be out and about safely so that the support partner can relax and not be worried all the time. But I think negative thinking, what we sometimes call brain chatter, is often the biggest hurdle. You know, if I can't do it my way, if I can't do it the way I used to do it before, if I can't do it without all this equipment, why bother? I just don't want to do things differently. And most important, people can fall into the trap of seeing adaptations and tools as giving into MS. And Mandy and I are convinced and here to tell you and share with you our conviction that when you use tools and strategies and devices and you plan together, you're not giving into MS, you're taking charge of it. You are taking charge of your symptoms, you're taking charge of your world and your life so that you can do the things that are important to you. Did I leave anything out, Mandy?
No, I was just going to reiterate that about your safety comment, though, Roz. The right mobility aid will not only help you feel safer, but it will help you expand your world. I see too often people struggling to keep using that cane because they don't want to give in to the next more involved piece of equipment. So they move less because they're not as safe moving or they're not as confident moving. And then you give them a walker and suddenly they can move more. So again, that flexibility and being open to other options and a willingness to try is really valuable. So thanks, Roz. Let's move on to the next one. I don't feel like a spouse when I am helping him or her with toileting. So this is pretty real. We hear this a lot, or variations of this a lot. So how do you deal with toilet troubles? Well, the physical therapist is going to say adaptations, adaptations, adaptations. So to be less hands-on with something, we have to replace your hands with something, right? If you want to give your loved one with MS more independence, we have to replace your hands that helped with other tools that can help. So this is just one of many, many examples of tools that can be helpful. This down here, this kind of lengthy stick that you see in the gray stick person, that's a toilet tong. So if you are concerned about your loved one helping you with wiping tasks, this toilet tong may allow you to do it a bit more safely, allow for that reaching to be more accessible, and voila, you get to have that privacy and enjoy that independence. Something else to consider when you're in the toilet is clothing. So often women will wear more dresses because it's less to manage in the bathroom. Another option is something called a pant clip. And what it is a clip, two clips actually. One clips onto your pants. When you're sitting down, you take the other end of the clip to your shirt or some part of your shirt so that when you stand up, there's a string or a cord between the two clips. When you stand up, then it helps to keep your pants up. Then you don't have to worry about bending over and falling or losing your balance. So another way to keep that independence, because minimizing hands-on caregiving in some situations can be minimized and improve independence for that loved one with MS by using these tools. Different techniques to consider. Transfers. So this lower right-hand corner is a picture of a sliding board from a wheelchair to a toilet. That's specifically a sliding board for toilets. That can be really helpful. This upper picture is a raised toilet seat, and then that seat slides between the toilet seat and then over to the tub and shower. So it's kind of a slide board, transfer bench, shower, chair, raised toilet seat all in one. So there are nice pieces of equipment like that that you can explore if that would be helpful for you. Something else to consider would be the sitting position. So some people actually find it easier to go to the bathroom approaching it face first, or even some side sitting so that you can access the grab bars easily. Again, just be willing to consider other positions and other options. If constipation's an issue, sometimes stools can be a little bit helpful for reorganizing that position as well. And then again, the modifications to the bathroom will help support safety and independence for both. If we want our loved one to be independent with less hands-on assistance, we need more assistance from adaptations and tools. So, Roz, in many ways, right, these tools and strategies, these are very practical, practical, accessible, easy to find and easy to implement. And getting there emotionally, I suspect, is a lot harder. Can you just talk us through how this type of a situation can impact a partnership?
So I think that's exactly right, Mandy. And I think what you said at the beginning is really important, that you want to make sure that no matter what the activity, but particularly activities around toileting, dressing, bathing, that respecting the person's dignity and privacy is really important. As adults, we treasure our dignity and our privacy, And when symptoms of MS get in the way or threaten that feeling, I think we feel vulnerable. We can lose our confidence. We start to feel like kids again, and that's not a good feeling. So using the tools that Mandy described is a really good way for a support partner to help, to provide assistance when needed, but to also give the person with MS the space, privacy, whatever that they choose to take care of these private activities. In addition to that, I think when a lot of hands-on caregiving is involved, partners often talk about how it impacts their intimacy as a couple. The intimacy they had before around sexual activity and physical closeness is somehow morphed into intimacy involving toileting and dressing and bathing. And so we really want to help partners find ways to keep that intimacy alive apart from these hands-on activities with activities of daily living. So it's important to remember that intimacy takes many, many forms. And even as you work together to problem solve around this, to think about how to manage the increasing symptoms of MS and how you're going to use tools and devices to keep each of you safe and comfortable and independent, that communication is a form of intimacy. In addition to that, I think people can find strategies in their household to separate the caregiving tasks, the hands-on caregiving tasks that Mandy's been talking about, from their social life, their couple life, whether it's having equipment not surrounding the bed in the bedroom, or whether it's creating a very intimate atmosphere when you're watching TV together or when you're in bed at night, that puts the emphasis on your relationship and your togetherness and less emphasis on the caregiving tasks. And it's possible to create intimate environments. Some people do it with music or with candlelight or just with quiet talking and hand holding. But you have to work at keeping that intimate flame alive when it's sometimes challenged by these other activities that you have to do. I also talk with couples a lot about keeping their partnership balanced. Most couples over time develop their respective roles. One person might handle more of the outdoor jobs while somebody else handles more of the indoor ones, or somebody might do the paperwork and the financial management for the family while somebody else likes to do the cooking. Whatever it is, people's roles evolve over time. And when those roles have to shift, because of MS progression or increasing symptoms, it's very important that there are trade-offs so that each person in the relationship continues to feel like he or she is giving as well as receiving. So you may not be able to mow the lawn anymore, but you might be able to plan the menus for the week. Or you may not be able to stand and cook in the kitchen and do the things you need to do, but you might be able to manage bill paying. So you trade and swap to ensure that everybody feels like a contributing member, and that helps to keep the relationship feeling balanced and satisfying. And I think it's also just essential to cultivate and capitalize on a sense of humor, because humor can carry you through lots of challenges, and we hear it all the time in our can-do programs from couples who say that without the humor, they don't know how they would have survived all of these changes. So if you feel like you've lost your sense of humor or need a little help recapturing it, that's when talking to each other as a couple and perhaps with a counselor or a therapist can be very helpful. And we're showing you these dance pictures on purpose. Not that everybody can be a professional, fabulous ballroom dancer with or without a wheelchair, but I think it's important to remember that couples do things together way beyond what they may have thought they could do. And enjoying physical activity, dancing to music, whether you're using a wheelchair or not, is a very intimate thing to do with your partner. And of course, just don't forget hand-holding, snuggling, and talking as a good foundation for intimacy. So this next quote, which I hear often in the groups that I do with support partners, when I think about what I need, I feel selfish. And I think it's important that we try to take selfish out of the vocabulary. Taking care of oneself isn't selfish. It is an essential part of sustaining one's health, wellness, and well-being. Self-care is self-sustaining. So just like the flight attendant on the airplane says, you need to put on your own oxygen mask before you assist the person next to you. And this is so true of being a support partner, being a caregiver. If you neglect your own needs and you don't attend to your own wellness, it's not only not good for your own health and well-being, but it makes you less able to provide the kind of help and support that you want so much to provide to your loved one. So we really see taking care of oneself as the very first step to taking care of others. And we're glad that so many of you are watching this together as a couple, because I think both members of the couple need to get this, that each person in the couple needs to take care of him or herself and ensure that your partner is doing the same. Being selfless, denying what you need, your interests, your hobbies, your relationships with other people, time to yourself, denying yourself all of those things isn't good for you, and it isn't good for your loved one with MS. So Mandy, can you talk a bit about what self-care looks like for support partners? Sorry to interrupt you.
I would be happy to do so. So what we think about as rehabilitation specialists and healthcare providers in general of what support partner health and wellness looks like, first and foremost involves having a primary care physician. We really, really encourage this at Can Do Multiple Sclerosis, that both the person living with MS and the support partner have a primary care physician to manage other comorbid health conditions, so other conditions that exist in addition to MS, or in the position of the support partner, all of the other health conditions that you need to deal with, whether it's diabetes or high blood pressure or any other cardiovascular condition. But just making sure that those are monitored and that they are managed appropriately. Primary care physicians can also help to ensure that you're getting the proper preventative care checks. So whether it's a mammogram or whether it's making sure you have the appropriate vaccinations and immunizations for your age. By the way, the CDC actually has a good resource where you can type in your age, your gender, and it will outline what are the recommended preventative care checks that you need to have for that age. So that's kind of a nice resource, cdc.gov. The second component of support partner health and wellness is a healthy diet. So that nice heart-healthy diet that we recommend for people with MS is the same diet that we recommend for support partners. So guess what? You guys get to do that together. Adequate exercise and physical activities that you enjoy. So the support partner should be empowered and encouraged by the loved one with MS to do activities for themselves, physical activities outside of activities they do together in their relationship. And Unfortunately, none of us are going to get more than 24 hours in a day, so we really have to encourage our partner to prioritize their exercise, prioritize their physical activity, and make sure that time is scheduled and preserved. And it's also important to manage your stress and manage your mood, because like all of the hot hats that we've spoken about so far, you really need to give yourself the chance to just take your hat off. But hopefully the hair can be a little more controlled than this picture, right?
Right.
All right, let's talk about the next quote, Roz.
So we often hear support partners, particularly when they're doing lots of hands-on caregiving and are wearing all those hats that Mandy and I have been talking about. They'll say, sometimes it feels like my partner's MS has really taken over my whole life. Everywhere I look, it's MS. And so what we like to talk about it can do is the importance of support partners, as well as people living with MS, finding their MS-free zone. So when you think about your life and yourself and everywhere you look and everything that you see has to do with the MS, it can really start to feel like you're losing your sense of who you are. You're sort of living the disease even as a support partner, and you kind of don't know where you are, and you feel just overwhelmed by demands, being pulled in lots of different directions, all those different hats that one's wearing. And people start to miss time for self, for taking care of themselves, for doing all the things that Mandy was talking about in terms of exercise, physical activity, recreation, enjoying hobbies, things that stimulate them and keep them content and satisfied and engaged. And so we encourage people to try and find their MS-free zone. And what I mean by that is some part of themselves that MS doesn't reach. For some people, it might be their sense of humor, a love of music, a hunting trip, a night out with friends, prayer. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's a part of you where you can get some emotional refueling. You can get charged up again to keep doing all the things that you need to do. If you have difficulty finding that MS-free zone in yourself, that's a really good time to sit down either with a very good friend who might be able to tell you what your MS-free zone is, just because they know you and love you so well that they can tell you where you might get that. Or without that, you might sit down with a counselor or therapist and say, you know, I need to find some part of myself that I can enjoy and use and deal with so that I don't feel so overwhelmed by all these hats I'm wearing. You can work on your MS-free zone by communicating with others, engaging other people to help you find it. You can compromise some. You know, you may be a perfectionist. You may want to do everything exactly the right way all the time, but you might actually have to compromise a little bit and realize the perfection in everything you're doing and all the hats you're wearing isn't actually necessary. You may work with your partner to prioritize what's actually most important for us to be focusing on and for us to be doing that leaves us some time that's free of all of these pressures. And again, finding that focus, finding your core, your source of emotional energy. And for some people, they've discovered that it might be medication or just taking a walk alone and allowing themselves to think and connect with the world around them. And Mandy, I think you may have some other strategies that people can use.
Yeah, so some other more practical strategies that you could use to support your MS-free zone is simplification. So thinking of ways to simplify those activities of daily living that we suggested earlier on, cooking, cleaning, dressing, bathing, and those instrumental activities of daily living, so the bookkeeping, the driving, things like that. How can those tasks be simplified or outsourced, or just figuring out an alternative way to do it, because simplification of those tasks can allow you more time for self-care. And if you have more time for self-care, then you're allowing yourself that MS-free zone that Roz is talking about. So in fatigue management for people living with MS, we talk about the 4 Ps of fatigue management. So I came up with 3 Ps instead for strategies for support partners to support their MS-free zone. The first P is planning. So schedule that MS-free zone time, like Roz was talking about. Schedule that time. Allow yourself permission to have that time. And loved ones with MS, encourage your support partners to have that time to have their MS-free zone. Make it a priority. And you make it a priority by communicating it to others. Sometimes just letting others know that this is really important to you. They will help you make that a priority for yourself and for your life together. Pacing. So I think support partners are guilty of this sometimes, overextending themselves and really, like Roz talked about, trying to be perfect and trying to balance all of those hats and wear all of those hats without a single tilt to them. So pacing and learning how to not overextend yourself and make sure that your schedule and your life is organized in such a way that it's manageable. And actually, I just thought of a 4th P. So if we do this again in the future, I'll add a 4th P, and that's personalization. And I think this is really important because, like Roz said, your MS-free zone doesn't have to be the same as the next guy or gal's MS-free zone. Everyone's MS-free zone and how it can be achieved is different and unique. So keep that in mind. And despite all of our best efforts, I think, things can feel out of control. Things can feel really overwhelming. So Roz, can you tell us a little bit about what those red flags are when we just need outside help?
So some of you listening may recognize these, but we talk to support partners frequently who say that they feel burnt out. Those hats they're wearing have just gotten too heavy. They feel overwhelmed with stress, anxiety about the unpredictable future, what's going to happen, what if they can't keep up with their caregiving activities, what's going to happen to their spouse or partner if something happens to them, lots and lots of worries. They can be totally exhausted from having what feels like 3 or 4 full-time jobs, and having interrupted sleep because of helping somebody in the bathroom multiple times a night, and just being stressed, which also adds to feelings of exhaustion. Sometimes people talk about feeling in despair. It just feels like it's all bigger than they can handle, which makes them then feel like they're failing, or somehow they're not measuring up or doing what they committed to do when they said in sickness and in health. In truth, none of us know exactly what that means when we say it at the altar, but it can really lead to these feelings of failure and inadequacy. And of course, being depressed, which we know is very, very common in people with MS, but we also know that care partners of people with chronic illness, not just MS, but caregivers for other illnesses as well, have a higher rate of depression than the general population. So if you're having any of these feelings, or a lot of these feelings, it's really important that you reach out for help. You could certainly contact the National MS Society. Their MS navigators are trained counselors and social workers, and you as a support partner are as welcome to call that number as any person with MS. They will offer support. They can give you referrals to local resources in your community. They can let you know about respite options that are available, and they can just help you problem solve and perhaps do some of the 3 and 4 Ps that Mandy was talking about, because that's what they're really good at. I would certainly encourage you to let the healthcare team know. Sometimes healthcare providers make all sorts of recommendations to their MS patients about all the things they should be doing, and a lot of those recommendations involve input from the care partner, and they never bother to consult the care partner or to ask if this is feasible or doable. They just keep making these recommendations. So sometimes as a support partner, you have to reach out to the healthcare team and say, well, wait a second, I need some help here. This is more than I can handle. Certainly family and friends, I wouldn't keep this a secret. I would reach out and ask for assistance or let people know that you're struggling. And faith-based organizations and your religious communities, there may be people there who can help you as well. But the main message is these are red flags that you need some assistance, so figure out where you want to go to get that help. And lastly, be sure to tune in to our last webinar in this series, where another psychologist, Matt Sacco, and I will be talking about recognizing these feelings of burnout and how to deal with them and hopefully avoid them in the first place. But we will be talking about that next week, so please join us. And our key takeaways for tonight, which we hope you've heard loud and clear, when people wear a lot of hats, feel all these responsibilities, it can feel very overwhelming. Being able to communicate effectively with one another is essential, vital for your care partnership. Please remember as a support partner that taking care of yourself is self-sustaining and essential. And to echo what Mandy has been saying, all these adaptations and modifications and tools can help you stay active, be busy, and involved in a world that's as large as you want it to be. And lastly, those red flags I just talked about are signals to ask for help, so please don't hesitate.
Thanks, Roz. We have one more polling question for you. What do you plan to do to make hands-on caregiving activities easier for both of you? And we just want you to choose all that apply. The first option is improve our communication, consider adaptations in our space and daily activities, talk with the healthcare team, prioritize self-care for the support partner, and tap a new resource. Improving our communication is the winner, but not far behind is considering adaptations in our space and prioritizing self-care for the support. I mean, this is wonderful. This is fabulous. It sounds like everyone has something in mind that they want to do as a result of participating in this webinar. So we wish you good luck with those goals. Ross, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I'm really thrilled to see the response to all of this. And fewer of you said talk with the healthcare team, but I would encourage you not to give up on them. If you self-advocate and you speak up with your healthcare providers, you may find that they can be more help than you anticipate. But I agree with Mandy. We wish you luck with all of these efforts that you're going to make.
Thank you so much, Roz and Mandy, for that great information and all of the recommendations to help support partners. We're going to open the discussion for questions and for Q&A. How can I get my caregiver to participate in webinars and support groups and activities and events like this?
So I'll start with that one. I think it's a great question. I think we have a challenge sometimes convincing support partners that these activities and resources are valuable to them. Sometimes they just take advantage of the time that you're attending one of these or participating in one of these to have some time to themselves. So we understand that, because time for themselves is hard to come by. But I think sometimes it's just asking them to participate in just one and give it a try. And certainly we find when support partners come to our can-do programs or any of our programs, they may come thinking they're just bringing the person with MS, but once they get there and participate, they're sort of blown away by how much help and support they get. So sometimes it's just getting the person to agree to try one, and that can make a change.
Great, thank you, Roz.
Additional comment. I also think that having the support partner, if possible, come to the healthcare provider appointments, because I think if the tone is set with the healthcare provider that the care partner or support partner is part of managing this disease, then there's more of a willingness. It kind of sets the tone, if you will, but there's more of a willingness to participate in other activities outside of just that appointment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you know what? I was thinking that comment that I had heard just recently about MS not being a me disease, it's a we disease. I think sometimes when you're trying to convince your support partner to participate, the best way to do it is not to just say, would you do this, would you do this? It's to say, this is a we disease. I know it's impacting you as much as it's impacting me, and I think we could use some help managing it more comfortably, and I'd like for us to do that together.
Well said, Roz.
Great, thank you. And Mandy, I have a couple of questions for you. Somebody had asked what that fourth P was. And then they had also asked, can you provide examples of simplifying ADLs?
The first part of that was the fourth P, which I apologize for not being on there because I just thought of it, is the personalization. So just acknowledging that every support partner's opportunity to find their MS-free zone is unique to them. So it's not going to look the same as someone else who is also a care partner. And some task examples might be, pull out that crock pot more. Put something in the crock pot first thing in the morning so that you're not coming home at the end of a busy day and trying to prepare a meal in addition to doing a lot of the hands-on caregiving activities. That would be a simplify. A simplification for an instrumental ADL, so say driving, for example, maybe rather than the care partner doing the vast majority of the driving to doctor's appointments or driving to other activities, maybe there are times when they call for an Uber or they call for a friend or someone else to help simplify that responsibility. Again, allowing more time for self-care, time to grow their MS-free zone.
Okay, great, thank you. A person with MS asked, they had commented that this is all really great information, but they're just not sure where to begin. And so the question would be, how do I get the conversation started?
So, starting conversations is always a bit of a challenge, right? You have to dip your toe in the water. And I think that it's a good idea to plan ahead. Make sure that you've created a time and a space for a conversation, so this isn't just on the fly when somebody's on the way to work or it's a busy, exhausting evening. You pick a time and a place, and you might start by saying, I think our world has gotten smaller. And could we talk a little bit about what we might do to try and get back to some of the activities and the friendships and the outings that we used to enjoy so much? Or it might be a conversation starter that says, I'm concerned because you're looking pretty tired and stressed these days. And I know you're wearing a lot of hats and trying to do a lot. And maybe we could sit down and talk about some strategies that would simplify things for you and reduce some of the pressure you're under. Could we talk about that? It's just one step, right? It's just starting one conversation that might lead to another conversation and another conversation.
Great. Do you have anything to add to that, Mandy?
No, I think Roz answered it brilliantly.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Roz's eye to again, use your healthcare team, use your mental health professionals to help guide you with those conversations. I think Roz illustrated that beautifully.
Great, thank you. And this is a question from a support partner. How do I convince my partner to use a mobility aid when he or she is resistant to the idea?
Yeah, so this we hear often as rehabilitation professionals. I think it's our responsibility to, again, display the assortment of options that might be appropriate for that particular person, allow them the opportunity to try it so that they can experience it, and then hopefully as a result of that experience, they'll realize the benefits of that. And if it's still a bit of a struggle, then too, I think it's okay for the care partner to say, you know what, I really want to try this for a while. I really want to see if this can help us out. But again, I think a mobility aid that's the right mobility aid for a person, it's going to expand their world. It's going to make them feel like better quality of life. They're moving more safely. They're moving in the way that makes them move better. And better might be different, but it will mean more for that person.
You know, and I think sometimes a support partner can talk about the benefit for everybody of trying a mobility aid. So sometimes it's daunting to think about going out and buying a scooter, for example, but trying one at a museum or trying one at the grocery store or trying one at an amusement park is a good way to, again, dip your toe in and try it. But I've heard some support partners have success saying, look, I would like to try this. I miss going for walks with you. I find it, very difficult to try and walk with you and hold you while we're walking. I'm always worried about your safety. I start to have pains in my neck and my shoulder. If you could use a scooter and tootle along in your scooter, then I could get that physical activity exercise that Mandy is telling me I need by trotting along to keep up with you. So you'd get to be independent, I'd get some exercise, and we'd get to enjoy the out of doors and the conversations we used to have when we walked together all the time. Sometimes that approach may help.
Nice. I think we have enough time for one more question. This is a question from a support partner, and they comment that I think my partner would use a mobility aid, but I'm concerned that she or he will become dependent on the aid.
That's all yours, Mandy.
So I think people don't need to be, like Roz said, I think, illustrated, we've never seen someone's bottom get stuck to a mobility aid or a scooter or a wheelchair. But I think that safety has to be the priority. Safety has to be the priority when it comes to mobility aids. And if it's the right mobility aid, it will allow people to move more, move better, hopefully. But if it's a transition from, say, walking to more use of wheeled mobility, then that energy that's conserved and that's reserved, that would have originally been used for ambulation or less constructive ambulation, can now be put towards good exercise, can be put towards more constructive movement, more constructive physical activity. So I don't like to say it's at all dependent. I think it's kind of reorganization of where the energy and the effort is put forth.
And another way to think about that is that you use the mobility aid not for a form of exercise. You use it for transportation, for mobility, because as one of our favorite neurologists, Randy Shapiro, has said, mobility is the answer to disability. So we want you to be mobile and active. The device helps you do that. And then, as Mandy said, you've conserved all this energy. You've gotten a prescription for a certain kind of exercise routine from your physical therapist. And with the energy you've conserved, you can then go and get that exercise. So mobility is not exercise, it's transportation. And exercise is something you do in a planned, constructive way with the energy that you have conserved.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both so much. It looks like we are just about at 7:15. So thank you, Mandy and Roz, for all this wonderful, valuable information. And thank you all for joining us this evening. You can find additional helpful resources on the Can Do MS website, cando-ms.org, and you will find archived webinars, e-news, and library articles. You can also submit a question to ask the Can Do team, and which will be answered by our team, one of our MS experts. We would also like to thank our partners EMD Serono for this webinar, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening. We look forward to seeing you at the next webinar, and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.